Hey Canucks fans, which franchise is in better shape, the Vancouver Canucks or the Toronto Maple Leafs? I'm Clay Emo, I'm at Canuck Clay on Twitter, I'm at Clayton Emo on Instagram, I'm the founder of the GLCPC, the Good Looking Canucks Positivity Club, and this is my Canucks take, all in one take. It's Clay's Canucks commentary for Saturday, February the 29th. Yes, it's a leap year, a unique day, once every 4 years, of course, and I'm here in Kelowna in my hotel room. We're gonna leave in about 20 minutes to go watch Jacob, my second son, and Kayla, our daughter, bowl in a provincial bowling tournament. My eldest son, Sean, he couldn't bowl in this one, although he qualified because he's got a big UBC event tonight, so kudos to him for getting his priorities straight, although I think bowling should be a priority. But Jacob and Kayla are here, and I look forward to sharing progress about how they do throughout the day. So forgive me already if you're watching this on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll probably see more bowling content than Canucks content today, but for one day only. And many of you saw the tweet I did yesterday. It has almost 5,000 views. Just a quick 14-second clip of us driving on the Coquihalla. It was crazy. 2 hours straight of heavy snow and wind. It was really scary. It's probably my most scary driving experience in my 45 years. Not that I was driving when I was a kid, but you know what I mean. Since I've been driving. And I'm glad we made it here safely, albeit a bit later than expected. But thank you to everyone who reached out, either during or especially after once I posted the video. Yes, we are here safely, and we're expecting hopefully a good day for both Jacob and for Kayla. Speaking of good day, I'm hoping for a good day for the Vancouver Canucks today. Playing in Toronto, game number 3 of their 4-game road trip. Going with the same lineup, it looks like, as those that skated in the loss against Ottawa on Thursday night. So no need to go. I know some people are thinking Zach McEwen in for Louis Eriksson, but at least that's not how they practiced this morning. Also, looks like Fantenberg will still get to play despite a really bad game on Thursday night, and Jordy Ben will be on the side. But we'll see. Maybe they'll change. Travis Green will change his mind during the day, but I don't expect him to. Usually he plays how he practices. But today I want to talk about this one thing, and it's something that I've talked about over the past couple of years. Not a lot on these vlogs, but I've seen a lot of talk about. And I've actually said this before. In the past couple of years, I've said a couple times that then I was hoping that the Vancouver Canucks would be kind of like what the Toronto Maple Leafs were in a few years. So let me say that a little better. A couple of years ago, I would say, man, this Toronto Maple Leafs team is where I want the Vancouver Canucks to be in 2 or 3 years. That's a better way of saying it. So basically, over the past 2 or 3 years, as I've seen Toronto rise up, acquire star players, and do really well in the standings, I was always saying, yeah, that would be cool if Vancouver gets to that point in a couple of years. Well, maybe that time is now, because we know that Vancouver has 74 points in 63 games, and Toronto has 76 points in 65 games. So they're basically equal to each other in the standings. Vancouver tied for second in the Pacific, and then Toronto third place in the Atlantic, that tough Atlantic division where, no matter what, they're going to get Boston or Tampa Bay in the first round. So up until this season, I was always saying Toronto is where Vancouver wants to be in 2 or 3 years. But you could argue right now that Vancouver is where Toronto is right now. So I'm looking not only to this season, but ahead, projecting ahead, which franchise is in better shape? So some context here. I talked about that they're basically equal to each other in the standings. And we know that Vancouver has not made the playoffs since 2015. They had that really nice run of years 2009, 10, 11, 12, and 13. 5 straight years of making the playoffs. Then they didn't make it in 14, and then that was a Tortorella year. Then they made it back to 15, and they haven't been since then. So they had 5 straight years of the playoffs, right? 2 exits to Chicago, then the Stanley Cup run, then 2 first-round exits. Then they didn't make it, then a first-round exit to Calgary, and then, of course, we've been dry for 5 years. Toronto made the playoffs in 2004, and then didn't make it again until 2013, so that's a span of 9 years. And then after that, they missed for another 3 years, and then finally they made it 3 straight years, 17, 18, 19, all first-round exits, as we know. And in those final 3 years, so remember, in the past 15 years, they've only made the playoffs 5 times, right? 2004, 2013, and then 17, 18, 19. But in those 17, 18, 19 years, their season point totals were high. It was 95 points, then 105 points, then 100 points. So that's an average of 100 points over the past 3 seasons. And Toronto might not get there, but they might wind up in the 95 to 100 point range again this year. So obviously a very strong regular season team, way stronger than the Canucks have been. But you'd hope that once the Canucks make the playoffs, hopefully this year, and I expect them to be this year, that it won't be just a quick or dramatic first round exit like Toronto has suffered the past 3 seasons, usually to the hands of the Boston Bruins. So Toronto, the last 3 seasons have been really good in the regular season, but no playoff success, just 3 or 4 home games, and that's it. So you can kind of factor in playoff success, regular season success, but really not a huge factor, I think, in this comparison. Then you look at going forward, which I think is more important. And we know that Vancouver, if they were to sign all of their pending UFAs and RFAs, so I'm talking about now Tyler Toffoli, Jacob Markstrom, Chris Tanev, Troy Stetcher, Jake Virtanen, Josh Levo, Oscar Vandenberg. There's like 7 or 8 of these guys, Adam Gaudet's. 7 or 8 of these guys, if you sign them at exactly the same amount that they're making this year, that's $22 million. And we know the Canucks don't have $22 million in cap space. They only have $18 or $19 million. So obviously, for next year, obviously something has to give there from that standpoint. That the Canucks simply don't have enough money. That's why they're talking about, do they trade someone like Tanev or Stetcher? Can they sign Markstrom? There's a lot of things that come into play. So that's the Vancouver Canucks. We know that they're saddled with some of these contracts that aren't so good. Louis Eriksson, Sven Berchi, Brandon Sutter. There's still the cap recapture penalty for Luongo, and I think we're still paying a bit for Spooner, I think, or something like that. So there's a lot of dead money, or a lot of money that you could argue, JB go another one, that could be used better. You look at the Toronto Maple Leafs roster, and they have 56% of their cap this season tied up in 5 players. And you know, the big 4 of Austin Matthews, John Tavares, William Nylander, and Mitch Marner. Those guys make about about $40 million to themselves. Then you add in Morgan Riley's $5 or $6 million. They make $45 million of the $81 million salary cap this season. 5 players take up $56 million. And I posted this back in September once Nylander's contract and Marner's contract were worked out. I think it was Marner's contract was worked out. That's who they were waiting for. And I basically said, man, that's 5 players, 56% of your cap. Are these guys in trouble? And some people said, yeah, they're in a lot of trouble. Others are saying, no, that's what you do. You build, around a big 4, a big 5, and then you bring them, surround them with other cheaper guys, cheap free agents, guys on ELCs, whatever it may be. So then you look at where the Toronto Maple Leafs are now, 6 months later, in March, heading into March, and they are basically tied with the Vancouver Canucks. And you could say, like I said, I'm trying to make the point that Vancouver Canucks are in a similar salary cap predicament. But look at Toronto next year. So remember, this year, 56% of their salary cap is tied up in those 5 guys. Then next season, right now, cap friendly is showing them as only $4 million in cap space. I said the Canucks were in trouble with $18 million of cap space to sign 7 or 8 guys, or 6 or 7 guys. Toronto they only have $4 million of cap space as of now, because they only have 6 UFAs and RFAs, and the biggest one being Tyson Barrie. He's at a $2.75 million cap hit, so he'll come off the books. But then really the rest of the guys that are coming off the books don't have a lot of money attached to them. So where's Toronto? How are they going to fill out the roster? That's why this season their blue line is Morgan Riley, Tyson Barrie, and then 4 guys that make $1 million or less. So I think Toronto is in even a bigger salary cap predicament than the Vancouver Canucks. I'm not just saying just because they're in a worse predicament means us feel better. No, I'm just trying to lay out all the facts, kind of. And I'm not a Toronto Maple Leafs expert. I know there are other people that know way more about the Maple Leafs than I do. But just a simple look at their past records, a simple listen to what's coming out of Toronto, and a simple look at the cap friendly page doesn't paint a pretty picture for Toronto either. So, and then you take, the coaching, the turmoil that happened this season with Babcock going out. There's a lot, and there's a lot going on in Toronto, and we think that everything is so analyzed and studied here in Vancouver. I'm sure it's 3-fold, 5-fold, 10-fold in Toronto. That's just my presumption. Those of you from Toronto, maybe you can weigh in and tell me what the feeling is around Toronto, because I don't wish ill will in Toronto. I don't hate Toronto. Nothing like that, but we do hear a lot about them, obviously, because of either the true or perceived bias in the market, Canadian markets, to the Toronto sports scene. So there we go, Canucks fans. I just want to lay that out for you and just talk about past performance in season and playoffs, then this season basically equal, and then going forward, especially with respect to the salary cap. My question to you is, which franchise is in a better state, or take the opposite, which franchise is in a worse state right now and going forward, looking ahead to next year and beyond? I bring this up because Vancouver, Toronto playing today, obviously 2 very passionate hockey markets, and I think it's a really, really good debate. Obviously, Toronto has some really, really good players in those big 4, at least, of Matthews, Tavares, Marner, and Nylander. Then, of course, a great defenseman in Morgan Riley, and then a really good goalie in Anderson. So if you look at those core 6 players who are locked up, You could say the same thing about the Canucks, although Toffoli's not locked up, but you could say it's locked up for a little bit. It's Horvat, Pettersson, and then Miller, of course, and Besser. Those are your 4 forwards. Then you have Quinn Hughes as our stud D, and Jacob Markstrom in goal, but we got to figure out what to do with him. So similarities aren't perfect, but they are there. So Canucks fans, leave a comment below. I love to know. I'll be able to, between games, between watching Jacob and Kayla Bowl, I'll be able to look at the comments and see what you guys are talking about. But which franchise is in better state? Which franchise is in worse state as of now, looking forward? The Vancouver Canucks or the Toronto Maple Leafs? Leave a comment. I love to read, react, and reply. Subscribe if you like to. Like this video if you like to. Enjoy the day. Wish my kids luck and enjoy the Canucks game. God bless. Go Canucks go.